How's it going, viewers? So I finally got this car going. If you watch the original video, or the first video I put out, where I was changing the head gaskets, I was actually going to do some more videos on that, but I made a few of them and I screwed up some of the steps, and actually screwed up putting the cams on the heads before I installed them on the motor. And since I did that and didn't want to backtrack on that video, because you can't put the heads on with the cams on because the head bolts are under the cams. Anyway, that's why I didn't continue on making more videos of putting this motor back together. But I put about 2,000 miles on the thing since I got it back going. It had some water leaks right here on the manifold, right there, and on the other side. And then it had a fault off and on of the sensor, so I changed that out, and that seems to clear that up. It actually came on and then went back off, and then it came on again, and the water level hasn't been low. And I don't know if it might have been the connection, but anyway, I put that in there. It hadn't been back on since, and I've had no more water problems, no more low fluid level, which was really annoying to start off with. Especially since I've changed every hose on this thing, and but it's doing good now. I had to make gaskets for those flanges there because of the O-rings. This motor loves O-rings, and yeah, so I had to make some gasket material gaskets, and no more problems. Change the bolts, a little bit better bolts in there, flange bolts, as in the same thing over here. I'll put new up there. But anyway, the motor's been running great, got plenty of power. Had a hard time starting it at first because it'd been sitting 6 months. But I finally got it cranked up, and actually the first time I cranked it up, I turned it off because there wasn't no water in it, and then it wouldn't start again. And I had to wait like all day, or maybe the next day, I can't remember, and finally got it cranked up. And that time I was like, screw that. I already had my water hose and everything ready, and got it filled up with water, and been doing good ever since. So got everything jammed up. But just to go back a little bit, in case anybody, there's plenty of videos on these motors on YouTube, and that's where I got a lot of my information. But anyway, just a brief overview of how to do that. You got to take all this shit off the top of the motor, supercharger, everything. You got to take all your stuff off the front, pulleys. I took my radiator out. Didn't take the hood off because I actually was able to get my radiator out with the hood still on it, and that kind of saved some aggravation and some time. But anyway, you got to take all the shit off the front, and then you end up taking the cover off. I took the alternator off, the power steering and everything. And you get the kit that goes over the cams, over those flats on the cams. Your keyway on your crank is pointed straight down at 6 o'clock. You put the pin in the bell housing, and when you go back together, you put the cams with those flats there, you lock it down, and everything. That's how you time it, and not that hard. The only thing that I did that was kind of iffy, but wasn't really iffy, because it either goes back together or it doesn't. The two sprockets on the crankshaft, the one on the outside came off when I was taking the motor apart, and I didn't know which way it went back on there. Well, the teeth either line up straight or they offset, or they might offset either way you put it. But if you don't have it on there right, you can't get the chain on it because it won't line up with the cam sprocket. So it's physically impossible to put the cam chains on there if you don't have those crankshaft sprockets the right way, because they will go on one way or the other. I think they got marks on them. The marks go together, meaning the one on the inside points to the front of the car, and the one on the outside sprocket, they match up. I think that's the way it worked. So after putting all the gaskets on it and putting it back together and everything, got it cranked up. It's been running great. Haven't really laid into it much because I'm kind of leery about doing that. This thing's got 10mm head bolts in it, and they're long, and that is just stupid. I mean, 10mm head bolt's only like a 3/8 inch bolt, literally as big as your pinky or my pinky. So anyway, what this video is really about, I've had an issue that came up, and I think I know what it is, but I'm having low oil pressure after the motor gets hot and up to running temperature. After about 15 minutes of running temperature, it says I have low oil pressure. And as soon as you tap the gas, even 100 RPM, it goes away. So after looking on YouTube, I heard that either you have a bad sensor. I changed the sensor. It did not help the problem. And if it's not that, then there's trash in the oil pan and on the pickup, which kind of makes sense. So anyway, I'm going to get under here. Here's the front of the car. And I'm going to go under here. And your sensor's right there. It's a new sensor. That did not help. So after doing some thinking and logical thinking about everything, when I took the motor apart originally, I had to scrape gasket material off the head or off the deck and off of some of the other parts. And even though trying to keep it from going in the motor, inevitably you get some that goes in the pan, even if they're just small parts, pieces. So that being said, what some people said on YouTube was that the screen in your pickup probably has trash in it, and it kind of makes sense, because as soon as you hit the gas just a little bit, the low pressure warning goes away. Now, it doesn't knock, it doesn't run hot, it doesn't make any funny noises, it really doesn't do anything. It runs good. Now I know it's got solid lifters in it, and you're not going to hear that like it is in a hydraulic lifter motor, but I haven't really heard anything, and I don't let it idle like without. I tried to idle it up, and I can show you where that idle switch is real quick. A lot of people say your idle is actually this little, well, I don't want to take that cover off. There's a little square screw, and that's actually not the idle switch. I really need to take that off, but there's a little square that goes in that bracket down in there, and you can turn it. All that does is take up the slack on your cable. The actual idle switch is on the bottom of that arm in there. It's a little bitty screw on the bottom of your throttle, and then it's got a lock nut that I tried to idle it up, and I think I might idle it up 50 RPM, and it's kind of hard to do. But I'm going to go ahead and change this oil, or drain the oil, take the pan off, and then we're going to see what this pan looks like. I'm pretty much thinking that the oil filter finally got all that trash out that would make it through the screen, and the screen's probably got a bunch of junk on it. So let me drain this oil, and then I'll start taking the pan off. So I drained the oil, and well, it's still trickling out, but I ran my fingers in it, and it doesn't feel nothing in it. There's no grit, no nothing. It actually feels good. Doesn't look bad at all. But I'm gonna I already got a new gasket, so I'm going to change that anyway. I need to look at that screen. If it ain't that, I might take that connection off of that. Well, I probably will take the connection off of that sensor, and then I'll clean it out, spray it out with cleaner or something, and then see if that might be a. I don't think that would be it though. I mean, that's a on-off switch really. It turns off at a. I've read two things. I've read that the thing picks up low oil pressure at like 2.5 psi, and I saw somewhere else where it was more than that, so I don't really know. But you know, I don't like it. It don't come on until it's idling and hot. So let me continue on. Let me try to get this pan off. So these bolts here use the 5/16 standard to fit it. It's probably an 8mm, but I got a 5/16. It fits right on it. They're 8mm bolts, so they just zip right out. I got the old little Ryobi, best tool I've ever bought. So I got the pan off, and it had about a, I don't know, 1/8 of a quart or something like that left in it, but there's a piece of gasket material or rubber or something. There's some junk right there, a little sludge. I mean, it's not terrible. Here's a couple of little pieces of gasket or something. A little crap in this corner. I mean, it's not really sludged up that bad. I mean, hardly at all really, but there's some shit in the bottom. Not as much in there as I was thinking there might be, but it may be in the pickup, so let's go look in there. I'm hoping it is the pickup, because that way I don't have to buy a fucking oil pump. Oil pumps crank driven, which means that I gotta take all that time and shit back off. I definitely see shit in there. Oh yeah. There's definitely, oh man. So, but other than that, I mean, I didn't know there's a wind tray here. So, there's definitely crap in there. I mean, I'm over here to the side. Let me go ahead and get that off. Actually, not terrible. Underneath there. Let me take that off. So, I guess I'm going to say hallelujah on this, because it is definitely this pickup. I don't know if you can see in there from this glare. Let me see if I can take it. That's better. There is a shitload of trash in that pickup. And you probably can't see it very well on this video, but if I can see back in there that there's shit all in there. So this is definitely the problem. It makes total sense if you think about it. At low idle, when it's cool, it's got thick oil, and the thick oil is maintaining the volume, or the I don't know how to explain it. I'm thinking that when it's idle and cool, it's still got thick oil that's maintaining the oil pressure. Then when it gets thin, look in there. That motherfucker is full of shit. It's probably 3/4 of the way blocked. But anyway, when I'm thinking when it gets warmed up and the oil gets thin, it's not maintaining the pressure because it's not drawing enough through, and it's just pushing it past the it's not maintaining the pressure around the pickup until it idles up. So yeah, that thing is fucking bad blocked. But it's nothing to get out. It's just got 3 long bolts. Take the oil pan bolts off and pan drops right down. And this thing is plastic, which is pretty shitty in my eyes. If that thing were to break, then you'd be really fucked. But matter of fact, let me see if I can. There's a piece of rubber that just fell out. So this thing's gonna have to be completely cleaned out. I mean, it is just, you wouldn't believe it. It's just completely stopped. But makes sense. There's probably a piece of rubber that got in there from something when I took it apart, probably original stuff, and probably pan's probably never been off this motor. So there you go. I wish you could see that better. But it fucking thing is bad stopped. Alright guys, I blabbed on and on long enough. That should do it. That's probably the problem, so thanks for watching. I'll post another video maybe when I get it back together and see if the oil pressure light goes away. Hopefully it does. I think it will. Thanks for watching.